Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. It is New Year's Day 2018, and it's time to make this video. Okay, so this video actually is not going to involve a lot of computation. A lot of this is just definitions. So all of the goods and services that we've talked about so far this year have been what are called private goods. It's a specific type of good. And when we look through the vocabulary here, we're going to see where it fits in. The important thing right now is to understand that the types of goods we've been looking at are not the only kind of good out there in the world. So to think about what other types of goods are out there in the world, we want to think about goods as having two different qualities about them. Excludability and exhaustibility. So excludability has to do with whether or not people can be easily prevented from actually consuming the good if they haven't paid for it. Most goods that are sold in stores are very excludable. The goods are in the store, there's like employees watching you, there's like a security system. If you do steal stuff, you can be like taken to court. So like the property rights for like a good or a service are very well defined. Even more services tend to be even more excludable. Like if you go to the dentist, he's not going to fix you unless you pay him. So the dentist has a lot of control over who gets to consume dental services from him. On the other hand, are goods that are non-excludable, which are goods that once they exist, it's really hard to control who actually consumes them. So a classic example would be air. Like, if somebody owned the air, they would have a really tough time preventing people from breathing it. Like, it's just there and people can inhale it and you can't really stop them. So that's pretty difficult. Another example here would be like swimming in the ocean. Like if somebody owned the ocean and wanted to charge people to swim in it, it'd be really difficult to put up a wall or a fence or something around all the beaches in the world and stopping people from being able to jump into the ocean and swim. It's just super prohibitively expensive to prevent people from consuming it. So some man-made examples of non-excludable goods would be national defense and roads. So for national defense, like once a country makes a military, you can't stop, individuals in the country from consuming national defense. Once it exists, everybody gets to enjoy its benefit. You can't really exclude somebody from the benefits of national defense in a country. Same thing with roads. Like once you build roads, there are a lot of roads, a lot of miles of roads. It's really difficult to keep people off of them. Yes, there do exist some toll roads out there, but like when you're driving around DC, it's really difficult to say, okay, some people can use these roads, but not others. Like once they're there, they're there. Sidewalks, same deal. Another example is radio waves. Like once a station broadcasts its signal, it can't really control who is going to listen to it. Anybody who has a radio can listen to whatever the broadcast was. So that's another example of a non-excludable good. So the other characteristic we're interested in is exhaustibility. So this just has to do with whether the good or service we're thinking about gets used up when you consume it. It sounds like, well, duh, you consumed it, so of course it gets used up. But it actually turns out there are a lot of goods that can be consumed without being used up. So an example of a perfectly exhaustible good, so this is a type of good that can get used up, would be like a slice of bread or an apple or something like that. Once you eat it, it's gone. You can only eat it once, hopefully. And if I eat a slice of bread, you can't also eat that slice of bread. It is my slice of bread. So exhaustibility, a perfectly exhaustible good can only be consumed by one person. And once it's consumed, it's gone. So many natural resources are also exhaustible goods, but get used up much more slowly than a slice of bread that I'm eating. So like fossil fuels would be an example. Fish and wildlife stocks are an example, depending on how they are hunted and fished and that sort of thing, whether or not they'll run out. Minerals, yada, yada, yada. On the other end of that spectrum, you have inexhaustible goods. So these are goods that don't get used up when you consume them. So they're also called non-rivalrous because both you and me and maybe a lot of other people can consume them at the same time. Or if I consume it, you might be able to consume it also later. So there's not a rivalry over who gets to consume it. So some examples would be like a movie. Like, if I watch a movie, it doesn't destroy the movie in the process of me consuming it. The movie still exists. Like, I can watch a movie and then, like, you can watch it the next day. When I go to the theater, there's, like, a gajillion showings of The Last Jedi. Just because I went to go see it didn't prevent anybody else from also seeing it. That's an example of good that's not used up once it's consumed. Sunlight, another non-rivalrous good. Like, we can all walk around the planet and enjoy sunlight, and just because I'm consuming sunlight doesn't prevent you from also consuming sunlight. So, those are examples of things where many people can consume it and it doesn't get, like, used up. Okay, so when we think about these two qualities, we can, can I make it bigger? I can. So when we think about these two qualities, we can make a little chart here. Oh, great. I was doing so well there for a second. So we can make a little chart, and think about 4 different types of goods. Most of the goods that we've been talking about this year, in fact, all of them, have been in this upper left box. They are goods that are both excludable and exhaustible. So like clothes and food, all that sort of stuff that we've been talking about. You go to the store and you buy this. Those are all private goods. So private goods are goods that are both excludable and exhaustible. Once you consume it, it's gone, and it's excludable. So there's a lot of control over who the good goes to. On the very other end of the spectrum, we have goods that are neither excludable nor exhaustible. So this is the box in the lower right corner here. So those are called public goods. These are things that you can't stop anybody from consuming it, so it's non-excludable, and it also doesn't get used up. It will be available forever. So sunlight, natural defense, clean air, hopefully. Those are all examples of public goods. So then we have the 2 other categories. So goods that are excludable but non-exhaustible. So this means I can control who gets to consume this good, so it's excludable, but many people can consume it at the same time. So these are called club goods because a lot of times an organization or club will form to provide this service or good to people in large numbers. A lot of these goods are way too expensive to provide to just a single individual, so a group of individuals has to get together and pay for it. So some examples of this would be like movies. Like a movie theater would go out of business super easily if every theater only had 1 seat in it. They have to exist where the theaters are large and a lot of people can come to see the movie, but they can charge you, like you have to pay for a ticket to get in. Golf courses are another example, like country club or whatever. Golf course is really expensive to build and maintain. Like it would go out of business if there's only 1 person using it. But you can put a fence around it and you can control who gets to use the golf course. So it's excludable. And a lot of people can continue to use the golf course over time. Like just because somebody plays 1 round of golf, that doesn't mean that other people can't come use the same golf course again. The course doesn't get used up as people use it. Private school education is also a club good. A school of 1 student would probably go out of business, but group of families can get together. You pay an entry fee, and you're provided with education. It's kind of like a golf course, but more educational, maybe. So then the last square is actually one that gets a lot of attention. These goods are non-excludable, so we can't really control who's consuming it, but they are exhaustible. That's a kind of a bad combo because we can't control who is consuming it, but it can run out. So like public goods, not, we'll talk about that in a second, but it's not a concern that if too many people use it, it'll all get used up. Like public goods are non-exhaustible, so even if everybody can use them, we're not going to run out. That's not true for what are called common pool goods. So it's like fish or lumber or stuff like that. That stuff can actually get used up, and so there's going to be a lot of attention paid to like how do we deal with that problem. Okay, so the private firms are most likely to produce private goods. Because if a good is a private good, then a firm can make the good, and then it can control who it sells it to. And once it's consumed, it's used up, and people might have to buy another one. Excuse me. Did not properly warm up my instrument before this. So the problem is public goods, like no private company is going to provide public goods. There's no profit in it. Any good that's non-excludable, meaning that you can't control who's consuming it, no private company is going to provide that because they can't charge people for it. Like they can't stop people for consuming it for free. So the private sector will usually never provide public goods or common pool goods. The private sector does provide club goods, obviously, but when you think about stuff about like fresh air or sunlight, national defense, there's a reason that the government usually ends up providing those things, and it's because there's no profit in it for a private company. Private companies don't have the power to tax people, so they can't charge people for consuming the good. The government does have the power to tax everybody in a country to provide those public goods and to safeguard common pool goods and that sort of thing. So part of the advantage the state has that private companies don't is taxation power. Another form of excludability that the government steps in to create are patents and copyrights and that sort of thing. So like drug companies are the classic example. They'll put in sometimes billions of dollars to develop a drug, and they finally get through all the testing and so the formula for that new medication, if there was no protection, then as soon as they started selling it on the market, other drug companies could just copy, buy some of it, break it down, analyze it, and copy it, and start selling it without having had to invest any of that research and development money. So what patents are designed to do is to protect people who invest in research and development and do put in all that time and money to invent something new, so other people can't just come in and start producing the good after somebody else has already worked really hard to invent it. So that's a form of legal exclusion that makes some goods more excludable. Same deal with copyrights for artistic works and that sort of thing. We've already talked about this. A private firm would never build a military for a country. That'd be super expensive to build. And then once you built it and you had jets and aircraft carriers and whatever, you wouldn't be able to charge anybody for it. Everybody would be like, no thanks, I don't need the national defense. And then they would just continue living in their homes and still be protected by the national defense. People can't opt out of it. Okay. So I'll finish this up in the next video.